Hello everyone, back tuning into Gazwaviz on your Easter Monday. So, as usual at Gazwaviz on a bank holiday, we are doing away with the regular weather videos. I'm going to have a day off and give myself a little bit of a rest. And in place of the regular weather video, we're going to have a historic weather video. So, on special occasions like Bank Holiday Mondays, Christmas Days, well, we don't really do one on New Year's Day, but Christmas Day and all the Bank Holiday Mondays through the year, we look at the historic archive of charts from weathercentral.de to just have a look back at past seasons and weather events, and that's what we're going to do for today's historic weather video for your Easter Monday 2018. We are looking back, not that far ago actually for this one, looking back to the spring and summer of 2013. Now, I have actually done a historic weather video for the winter and early spring of 2013. That's one of the videos I did quite a while ago, back in around 2014, I think I did that one. But this one is only going to touch on the winter briefly. It'll be mainly focusing on the spring and the summer, because very interesting, that summer of 2013, we had a really hot July, and it is the only summer month, only month so far this decade that has achieved a central temperature over 18 degrees Celsius. So very unusual sort of summer month for this decade, which has been pretty grim for summers really so far. So I hope it brings back some memories for you on this bank holiday Monday. Just say the websites we're using for the historic video. We're going to start off with Meteo Seal, which we don't normally do, but the story of this period really starts at the beginning of the year in the stratosphere. So I'll just begin the story with the stratospheric archive at Meteo Seal. The other websites using for this video is weathercentral.de, and you find a link to Weather Central on the links page. They have a historic archive of charts going right way back to the 1850s. Now, it used to go back to 1871, now goes back to 1851. So you can while away many a happy hour, many a rainy and cold sort of bank holiday Monday can be spent looking at the historic archive of charts at weathercentral.de. I've done it myself over the years. And you'll also hear a lot of information for this video from Trevor Harley's weather website, and you can find the link to Trevor Harley's weather website and also to weathercentral.de on the links page. Basically, as I always explain with these historic videos, I couldn't do them without those two resources. I'm just really like the storyteller. I'm kind of like the smallest part of the whole of the thing. Really, the main thing is the charts, together with the information that we get from Trevor Harley's weather website. So, I couldn't do the historic videos without those two resources of information, and seriously, big thank you to those two websites for allowing me to use their charts and their information, and big shout out to Trevor Harley and to weathercentral.de. It's obviously going to be quite a long video because we're covering several months, so if you can't watch it all in one go, it will be placed within the historic archive of videos at Gazwaviz. We've got a very long list now of historic weather videos that we've done since we began Gazwaviz back in 2012. It's certainly over 30 now weather videos. I used to do them quite frequently back in the day, but I sort of have them more for special occasions now, so we only do like 4, 5, 6 a year, so it's always quite special when we do a historic weather video. So do have a look at the historic archive if you would like to see some of our some of my earlier work. I'm not very good on those early videos, I have to say. I'm sort of learning my craft a little bit on those, but I get better as it goes along. So I think that's pretty much covers everything that I've got to say. Just say again, thank you so much for tuning in on your Bank Holiday Monday. A good friend of mine has helped with this video. I'll talk more about that when I get to that part of the video. But you're going to see some information from a very good friend of mine who has supplied me with something a little bit different as well for this particular video. So I'll talk you more through more about that when we get to it. But let's start off really with the beginning of the year. This is the 5th of January. 2013, and this is showing the stratospheric temperature over the North Pole, because there's a huge stratospheric warming that took place on the 5th of January and from the 5th, I think, to around the 7th of January. And it's these red colours just here over Siberia that are depicting the lift up in the temperature in the stratosphere over the North Pole on the 5th of January. So if we run through, you'll see what happens. These blue colours, which are sort of the cold temperatures over the North Pole in the stratosphere, they're pushed out by those much warmer colours, the greens and the yellows. And effectively what we're doing is we are seeing the total obliteration of the polar vortex at its roots in the stratosphere. This was a very, very dramatic sudden stratospheric warming event that took place through the first half of January 2013. And so there we are on the 13th of January 2013, and we've basically obliterated, total obliteration of the polar vortex at its roots in the stratosphere. And that began the story for this year, for 2013. So that's how the pressure charts looked on New Year's Day 2013. Rather cool and showery New Year's Day. Now, this is the 7th of January 2013, and whilst that major warming event was taking place in the stratosphere over the North Pole, we actually go into a very mild spell of weather very briefly, with high pressure building up from the south, trying to reach northwards, you'll notice. So already we're beginning to see some effects perhaps from that stratospheric warming. But initially, the initial response as it was happening was to lift the temperatures up and give us quite pleasant spring-like weather. But that didn't last very long at all. And as we go through to the 10th of January, already we're beginning to get a tropospheric response to that sudden stratospheric warming, as high pressure is beginning to build up to the north. We're starting to go into much more of a block type pattern already. Well, it's quite unusual to get such a sudden response to the sudden stratospheric warming, such a quick response, I should say. Quite unusual to see that, but already by the 10th of January, we was beginning to see some effects. And then we have high pressure building increasingly over Scandinavia as we go through to the middle of the month. So after that very brief burst of spring through the first week of January, it starts to turn much colder and much more blocked as high pressure is ridging to our east and blocking off the Atlantic. So by the time you go through to the 18th of January, we're firmly into a cold pattern. We've got high pressure over Scandinavia, we've got low pressure out in the Atlantic, and the winds are coming in from a southerly to southeast direction, and they're cold winds as well. This low pressure slips away to the south and maintains that bitterly cold flow of air from the east on the 19th of January. Through the 20th of January, we are firmly in that very cold weather. And then these weather fronts try to bring milder air in off the Atlantic around the 21st. They're coming up against that block of cold air with the Scandinavian high ridging over towards Greenland. And so they're producing increasing amounts of snow. We stay cold and blocked through the 22nd, and that low pressure slips away to the south with the jet stream, and high pressure is maintained through to the east. Another snow event takes place as we run through towards the closing days of the month, but then the Atlantic does break through. And I wanted to start at this point, although this video is specifically focusing on spring and summer. I wanted to start at this point because you'll see that as we go along into the spring, the weather patterns get actually more and more extreme. So at this point, we've had around a week to 10 days of pretty cold and wintry weather, but now the Atlantic has broken through. We haven't sustained that cold and wintry weather for all that long, so we end January on a relatively mild and unsettled note. That's how we go through into February as well, also relatively mild and unsettled with the winds in from the west. We head up through to the end of the first week of February, and again we're starting to find those low pressure beginning to dive southwards into central parts of Europe. So the atmosphere is behaving abnormally. Let's go back to the beginning of February. We've got a flat zonal westerly flow after that cold spell through the middle and second half of January. We've gone into an Atlantic-driven pattern. And if this was like in the 1990s, this Atlantic-driven westerly pattern would continue for weeks on end. But just after a week or so, we find the jet stream again beginning to push southwards. This is signs of that southern stratospheric warming beginning to affect the troposphere and beginning to turn the weather patterns abnormal. So by the 8th of January, 8th of February I should say, we're beginning to take colder air back down from the north. And we're starting to get that high pressure building over Scandinavia again on the 10th as low pressure is trying to come in from off the Atlantic. And so this leads to another snow event as we go from the 10th through to the 11th with this area of low pressure which wants to come in from off the Atlantic and bring mild air, not able to do so, so it stalls and slips southwards, and it keeps the winds, it maintains the winds from an easterly source, and so cold air undercuts, and we get snow here around the 10th, the 11th through to the 12th of February as that low pressure slips away to the south, but wind turns into the east. Notice high pressure is back in over Scandinavia, and so we're off and running into another cold spell. The Atlantic tries to return again on the 15th of February 2013. Doesn't come to a great deal, and then high pressure begins to increasingly build to our east by the 18th, turning it mostly dry but cold and frosty. There's the high pressure back over Scandinavia again on the 20th. More of a Scandinavian high this time, more obviously high pressure over Scandinavia this time. So you notice that as we're going along, we're beginning to increase the pressure over Scandinavia that little bit more. Winds are trying to get into a direct easterly, and in fact they do manage to do so by the 24th of February. We're digging down quite a cold easterly wind there with that high pressure over Scandinavia bringing snow showers into the east. Then the high pressure sort of collapses down over the country as we go to the final day of February 2013, ending the month on a fairly dry and quite chilly note. So that's how the second half of the winter panned out after that southern stratospheric warming. But now we get to the main point of the video, which is spring and summer. Huge contrast between the two seasons. So we begin on the 1st of March with high pressure centred over the top of the UK. Now this is a very cold month. March 2013 has a centering temperature of 2.7. It is famously the coldest March since 1883. But depending on which temperature series you look at, it's either the coldest March since 1883 or possibly 1962 or maybe 1892. Personally, I'd take the 1883 figure as the most reliable number. So I say that this is the coldest March since 1883. It's the first time that we've had the coldest month of the winter in March since 1937. So it's colder. This March is colder than the December, January, or February that preceded it. That's a very rare occurrence indeed. There are several periods of heavy snow and also heavy snow showers. For example, on the 11th, 12th, there's disrupting snow in the south and along the south coast in the Channel Islands too. Getting ahead of myself. Let's start off with the beginning of the month though, because actually it's quite a mild opening to March 2013 with high pressure centred over the top of the country on the 3rd, and then as the high pressure slips to the east, we start to drag up this very mild southerly flow as we go into the 5th. So the 5th of February, As you see, his temperatures reaching 17.5 degrees at Swancombe in Kent, and also across parts of Wales as well. We're getting close to 18 degrees Celsius on the 5th of February 2013. And I remember the day very well. There was a lot of sunshine then, and it really did feel incredibly spring-like indeed. But it wasn't to last. There's the upper air temperatures for the 5th of February. This is the warmest point of the month, and the upper air temperatures do look nice and spring-like. But by the 6th, already we're starting to see signs of a change. That high pressure that brought that little burst of spring is collapsing down towards the Black Sea as low pressure is developing in the central Atlantic, and high pressure is building up over Scandinavia. And this is already starting to switch wings from a southerly to more of a southeasterly, and then those winds turn proper easterly as we go through into the 7th of March, and we begin to pull increasingly cold air out from central parts of Europe by the 8th. That takes us to the 9th, and we're in a proper blocked sort of setup then, with high pressure from Greenland over towards Scandinavia, and low pressure is down to our south, and the winds are pushing in from the east, and they're bringing cold air with them. Look at that. By the 10th, the winds are going proper easterly, and as I already said, we do have a snow event occurring around this point down on the south coast and around the Channel Islands. The 11th and 12th of March were bitterly cold days with this strong easterly wind, pulling the isobars back. The air is originating from Russia. It's screaming in across northern Europe from the Urals and hitting the UK. This low pressure down to the south is trying to bring milder air up from the south, not able to do so. It's coming up against that block of cold air, and it's producing heavy drifting snow across southern coastal counties and down in the Channel. There's the upper air temperatures for the 11th of March 2013. It's bitterly cold, but 15 Celsius ice front is heading in from the east, and that's how the upper air temperatures look on the 12th of March 2013. Again, bitterly cold with those upper air temperatures, and the low pressure across northern France, that's providing the energy and the precipitation to be producing a lot of snow down in the south. Otherwise, it's just extremely cold. Temperatures barely above freezing, severe night frost as well. And yeah, I mean, we've got nighttime temperatures going down to around -12 in Kinbrace and Aboyne. That's actually the coldest night of the month, that minimum temperature of -12.9. So actually it's -13. That's recorded at Kinbrace and Aboyne as well, around the 11th to the 12th of March. The 14th of March sees that high pressure begin to pull back into the Atlantic just a little bit, starting to allow perhaps a slightly less cold feed of air to come down from the north. But then we get this area of low pressure developing over the country on the 16th. So that's bringing a mix of rain, sleet and snow. And as that low pressure starts to slip southwards, the block begins to strengthen around Greenland. So what's interesting about this month, and this is all being impacted by that sudden stratospheric warming in the first week of January that I started off this historic video with. So the patterns are becoming increasingly severe. It's becoming increasingly blocked over the northern latitudes as we're going further and further into March. You're getting further and further away from that sudden stratospheric warming. So although we had that immediate response in January, middle of January, to the sudden stratospheric warming, the patterns just get more extreme the further away we get to it. So here we are on the 18th of March, for example, in a very, very blocked pattern now, very abnormally blocked with high pressure over Greenland, extending back to Scandinavia, also extending up to the Arctic. This low pressure just over country is slipping southwards, taking snow through many parts of the country and allowing this extremely cold feed of air to push in from the east. That's how the upper air temperatures look on the 19th of March 2013. They don't look overly dramatic, but on the surface it is very, very cold air that we are moving through, or certainly very cold for the time of year. And then we go through to 20th of March 2013, and look how severely blocked it is. You don't see charts like that every day. That is a result of the stratospheric warming that occurred over 2 months now from this point. But again, we've got those bitterly cold winds feeding in from Russia and from the Arctic. This low pressure down to the south is bringing heavy snow to southern parts of the country. As we go through to the 21st, we find another area of low pressure developing out to the west. That's trying to bring milder air from the Atlantic, and this is a real blizzard that occurs here around the 21st, 22nd of March 2013. There's deep drifting lying snow across many, particularly central parts of the country through this phase. It is a little bit less cold down in the south. I think down close to the south coast, it's more towards rain and sleet, but I remember this very well. Wales and Midlands, parts of northern England, real blizzard-like conditions going on at this point with those very tightly packed isobars drifting the snow around. This is very extreme weather for so late into March. And what's interesting is that actually the low pressure that's trying to bring that milder air in kind of loses the battle and begins to slip back into the Atlantic as a block is maintained and continues to feed those winds in from the east. I'll give you a few more interesting facts about this month. So rainfall, which mostly falls as snow, to be honest, through this month, totaled 73.9 millimetres, which is very close to the long-term average. Snow fell on up to 20 days this month across parts of the Midlands, parts of northern England, and parts of Scotland too. Given it was an extremely easterly month, pulling in air from the continent, it was unsurprisingly a very dull month as well, with average sunshine just 87 hours. In parts of the east, it was the dullest March since 1984. So when you get easterly winds, you tend to get a lot of cloud associated with them. And as you can see, this is a very easterly month. So that low pressure that had a go at bringing milder air in, but just produced a blizzard and drifting snow across many parts of the country around the 21st, 22nd. That slips out into the Atlantic, back out into the Atlantic. The block is maintained to the northeast, and we continue to feed in those bitterly cold easterly winds, and that takes us pretty much through to the end of the month. And look at how abnormally blocked that pattern is on the 26th of March. This is kind of like the patterns we had in the winter of 1947, really, although by this point in 47, actually the blocking was relenting. But I mean, it's sort of blocked from Canada over there to Greenland, to the north of Scotland, to Scandinavia, to Siberia and Russia. And if we got to extend above the Arctic, it would be very blocked up there too. So the westerly flow is shoved down here, well to our south, right way down towards sort of Portugal and North Africa. And we just have this easterly flow extending from Russia over Europe into the Atlantic and eventually arriving in Canada, which is an extraordinary sort of situation, given that we should be seeing westerly winds in our part of the hemisphere. So we go through to the end of this extraordinary cold and blocked March, and that's how we finish up on the 31st of March 2013, ending the month, still maintaining high pressure. We're going into the Easter period now, I think, of 2013, and it's a very cold Easter indeed. Most of the snow is now gone. We're under high pressure, so it's dry, but the strange thing about it is that the frost is very severe by night. Daytime temperatures are barely above freezing. I remember how frozen solid the ground was, even at the end of March and through the first week of April, which is really rare for that to happen, because the sun is now as strong as it will be in September. Of course, at the end of March, it's as strong as it will be in early September. So to be able to get the ground frozen solid going into the middle of spring is really very unusual indeed. That's how we go into the 1st of April 2013, and again that high pressure is maintained to our northeast, bringing bitterly cold conditions through the first week of April. April 2013 has a CT of 17.5. It is a cold month, but it wasn't quite as cold as the April before it in 2012, which was actually the coldest April since 1989. The first 12 days of this month are easterly, so it continues the cold weather that happened through particularly the second half of March. We still have snow lying across many parts of the country. There are some very cold days at the start of the month with daytime maxima of only 0.5 degrees at Lake Vyrnwy in Montgomeryshire on the 1st of April. So, as I say, the temperatures are really struggling to get much above freezing through this first week. The lowest minimum temperature is minus 11.2 at Braemar on the night of the 1st to the 2nd of April. Again, that is an extraordinarily cold temperature for so late into the spring. So these very cold conditions continue through the first week of April. This is the 8th of April, end of the first week, still blocking off the Atlantic. These areas of low pressure still unable to bring their weather fronts and bands of rain in. We still keep this cold blocking feature that was a result of the sudden stratospheric warming that happened at the beginning of January. On the 8th of April, we're still having an effect from that sudden stratospheric warming. But, and it's a big but, the cold weather is about to start to unleash its grip. Release its grip, I should say. So by the 10th of April, we're beginning to move the Atlantic back in. It's a slow old process. It doesn't happen very quickly at all, but slowly, the blocking is beginning to relent. Low pressure starting to head in. The jet stream is beginning to come back north as well. That's the 12th, and then this is the 13th, and this is the change over day. The weather change, Trevor Harley says, on the 13th, as winds turn into more of a southerly to southwesterly direction, that long frozen cold spell of weather that had been on and off since the start of January but had really bitten through March, finally it begins to end. There's the upper air temperatures. We're starting to edge those milder yellow colours our way. And look at that, by the 14th, we push them through. Yes, spring springs into life, and there we are on the 14th of April. Our southwesterly winds, the blessed southwesterlies, have returned, and finally we begin to lift the frost out of the ground, and very rapidly, given the strength of the sun and the mild air mass, start to melt that snow away. We go through to the 16th of April, and we're in a very different weather pattern now. High pressure is relocating to our south and east, with low pressure heading in from the Atlantic, bringing wet and windy weather. That little unsettled spell doesn't last very long. High pressure is actually building back in over the country, and then we start head up towards our mildest spell of weather, our warmest spell of weather during April 2013. So the highest temperature of the month is 23.0 at St James Park in London on the 25th of April. With this high pressure down to our south, we drag up the air from sort of central southern climes, and much warmer indeed. So the first week of April, it's freezing cold, snow-covered, frozen ground, but by the third week of April, we're actually into what you could describe as almost like summer-like temperatures, with temperatures going up above 70 Fahrenheit, 23 degrees. Now we end the month turning things a bit cooler again as the high pressure pulls out into the Atlantic, but winds begin to switch back into the north. That's how we end April 2013 in a bit of a messy pattern, but essentially we're trying to get the wind back into the north again. Then we're into May, and May is a month that has a central temperature of 10.4, so again it's another cold and average month. This is a really interesting period because I think we have around 5 or 6 months on the bounce that are below average, which is the longest run to date of below average CT months. It's a cold month. Travis Harley says it's the coldest since 1996. It does have a fairly dry and warmish first week, but then the winds mostly turn into the north. So as we run through the first week, you'll see that high pressure never too far away. It's over towards the east. We're bringing up a slightly milder southerly type flow. And that's lifting temperatures on the 7th of May to 23.7 degrees at Crosby in Merseyside. Although the coldest night actually happened very early in the month, on the night of the 1st and the 2nd. It went down to 4.8 degrees at Tulloch Bridge, which is quite cold for a May night. But we have had colder than that. It can get below freezing by night, actually, in May. But this is the warmest day of the month, the 7th of May 2013. But quite quickly we get rid of that and we bring these areas of low pressure back in from off the Atlantic. It looks like it should be quite unsettled, but it doesn't really stand out as being a particularly unsettled month. The main thing is with the high pressure still sort of blocking to the north and to the west, although much less compared to what we had through March into early April. The same kind of pattern is trying to maintain itself, and so the winds are still coming in from a northerly or northeasterly direction, so it is relatively cold. As I say, it was the coldest May since 1996, with these blocking areas of high pressure consistently out to the north and to the west of the country as well. It looks like it's a very unsettled month, but it doesn't stand out as being a particularly wet month at all, so not here in Northamptonshire. That's how we end May and end the spring of 2013. And we're looking still fairly blocked-ish, really. We've got the Azores High trying to get itself going down here, but essentially we're still sort of blocking things out up to our north and to our northeast. And the flow, if you follow the isobars, the flow is still generally coming from a northerly direction. So still quite cool, really, if anything, as we end May and as we end the spring of 2013. So that closes the door on the spring. Now we've got the summer coming up next, but I'm just going to have a little pause there. I'm going to have a sip of water, and why don't you go and get yourself a cup of tea and some biscuits, and we'll meet back and we'll go through the summer, because things are going to get very, very interesting. I mean, it's already been very interesting through the spring, but things are going to get even more shocking as we go through into the summer. So get yourself a cup of tea, get yourself a couple of biscuits, and we'll meet back here in around 2 minutes and continue the story of the spring and the summer of 2013. Okay, and we're back and we're ready to resume our historic weather video looking at the spring and summer of 2013. I'm just going to check to make sure that we're recording. Yes, we are. So welcome back, and we're going to carry on now having a look at the summer of 2013 after we just explored the very cold and wintry spring of 2013. Things are going to change big time as we go into the summer, and we're starting on the first day of June 2013. Now this is our final colder than average month, a string, as I said before we paused, of around 5 or 6 colder than average months ends with June 2013, which comes out with a central temperature of 13.6, so only a little bit cooler than average, but nevertheless it did continue that series, which I think at the time was the longest run of colder than average months on the trot since probably right way back to 1993, where I had a very long run of colder than average months through the summer and the autumn of 1993. Not sure. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. I know people do get very cross with me when I get these sort of facts and figures wrong. But I think that was the case. Anyway, it was a very long run of cold and average months. It finished with this month. So June, Trevor Hardy writes, it's a dry, but in other ways unremarkable month. Temperatures, Trevor says temperatures were close to average, but certainly by the CET, it was a little bit colder than average. The maximum temperature this month is 26.4 degrees in Hartsmansow. That's how you pronounce it, in East Sussex, and also 27.2 at Heathrow on the 29th. That's a quite modest maxima, really, monthly maxima for a summer month, to be honest. Although June, of course, it is the coolest of the 3 summer months. So high pressure is dominating here through the first week of June. We have a big area of high pressure over the UK and reaching up towards the northeast as well. Remember, when we get to the summer months, those easterly winds that bring us those frozen conditions in the winter and in the early part of spring, by the summer months, the easterly winds will generally be bringing quite warm air in from off the continental land mass. So after a fairly dry sort of opening week, the second week of the month turns a little bit more unsettled with these areas of low pressure heading in from off the Atlantic. So we do go through a rather westerly phase through the middle part of the month. Quite unsettled conditions coming through then. But as I say, it was a pretty dry month overall. This takes us to the 18th, where we're trying to push up some heat across the country. Most of the hot weather is across central and eastern parts of Europe, but we are trying to get that heat closer. So maybe it's just a little indication of what's going to happen in a couple of weeks' time. There's the upper air temperatures showing a real heat wave is pushing out of North Africa into many central parts of Europe. We're just on the edge, just on the periphery of that here in the UK. Certainly don't remember any particularly very hot days, as I say, but the maximum temperatures that occurred during this month are quite modest, really. So we're talking about 27 degrees on the 19th, and 26 degrees, I should say, on the 19th, and 27 degrees on the 29th. So fairly modest maxima, really. But we was quite close to a real push of heat moving into central parts of Europe. Being on the edges of that, it's quite unstable. So I think this generated some thunderstorms around the 20th, 21st, and very quickly any thoughts of getting that heat into the UK swept aside as the heat moves over towards the eastern part of Europe. Then it goes rather cool with those northwesterly winds coming back on the 24th. But then on the 27th, look at this. The Azores high, which was absent throughout the first half of the year, that Azores high begins to start to make its move. Here it comes, starting to head in from off the Atlantic. Initially, quite a weak push of high pressure from the Azores that tends to be flattened off. But nevertheless, it does bring some very warm conditions into the south. As I say, the highest temperature of the month is 27.2 at Heathrow on the 29th, courtesy of the blessed Azores high. So then we have a look at the upper air temperatures, and we see that we do try to bring some warmer air up from the southwest, but generally still the upper air temperatures are relatively cool as we go through to the end of the month. So this moves us into July 2013. And what can we say about July 2013? Well, it has a central England temperature of 18.3 degrees. It is the hottest month since July 2006. It's also the hottest July since July 2006. Trevor Hardy says it's a very hot month, the warmest since 2006 and the 6th hottest ever, with only 1921, 1976, 1983 and 2006 having been warmer. There's a notable heat wave with a prolonged period of high temperatures that sets up between Saturday the 6th of July and Wednesday the 24th of July, when 28 Celsius or more was recorded at one or more location on each of those 19 days. The last time the UK saw such a long period of hot weather was August 1997, which also had a run of 19 days. So this is a very prolonged and unusual spell of hot weather. In some ways, a little bit hotter, perhaps in terms of the number of consecutive days, than even what we saw in 2003, August 2003, and also July 2006. So this is a very, very historic month. And as I said at the beginning of the video, there's been no July or no summer month either that has been this hot this decade. This is the only month so far this decade, and the decade is getting short now. We've only got this summer, 2018, and next summer, 2019, to go. So it's possible this will be the only month this decade that will reach 18 degrees Celsius, which is quite extraordinary, really, because back in the 1990s, I mean, we have many months reaching 18 Celsius plus. Off the top of my head, we had July and August 1995, I think. We had August 1997. We had August 1990, reached 18 Celsius or more in the CT. Don't forget 1994, July 1994, that month also reached 18 Celsius plus. And then in the 2000s, August 2003, July 2006, 2 months off the top of my head that did reach 18 Celsius or more in the CT. So to only get 1 month in this decade, that would be quite something in this era, so-called, of warming. So we begin July 2013 with high pressure to our south. There's the Azores high beginning to make its move through the first week, but at this point the fourth still relatively unsettled with the air in from the Atlantic. But by the 5th of July, the Azores high is inflating. And here we go to the 6th. This is the beginning of the heat wave as the Azores high froze up that ridge that centres over and just to the east of the British Isles. We start to bring the air in from the south and the southeast. Look at the upper air temperatures. They're hot. Temperatures are rising to or above 28 degrees on this day, 6th of July 2013, and will continue to do so right the way through every day to the 24th. That's a classic summer chart. If you want hot and dry weather in your summer, that's as good as it gets. High pressure is slap bang over top of the country. We have a legacy of very warm air that's been pulled up from the south as well. There's the upper air temperatures. They're looking nice and hot. All of those really cold upper air temperatures from back in the spring. It's a distant memory. It's all gone. And now the weather has completely flipped into something that is remarkably dry and hot as well. So we carry on through these charts up to the 14th. The Azores high remains well and truly in charge of the weather, and we're heading up towards the hottest period of the month and also of the summer. As we get into the second half of July, we find again the Azores high is maintained very, very closely. The jet stream is up here. It's a long way to our north. If you want a hot summer, you want to see the jet stream packing its bags and heading off to Greenland and Iceland, and that's exactly what is happening here, which allows the Azores high to build that ridge up from the south. The 17th, again, another hot day, unbroken sunshine and universally fine weather across many parts of the country. I'll take you through a few more facts and figures from Trevor Harley. So the highest temperature of the hot spell occurs on Monday the 22nd of July, where temperatures reach 33.5 degrees at Heathrow and at Northolt. That's over 90 Fahrenheit. The 17th was a hot day too, with 32.2 degrees at Hampton in London. The 19th saw the highest temperature for Northern Ireland. You went up to 30 degrees there on the 19th of July. Scotland with 29.7 at Cuppa in Fife, and Wales with 31.4 at Porthmadog were also very high temperatures indeed. There was also some very warm nights. There were several warm nights with minimums of the night of the 22nd, 23rd, which is going to be very thundery, being around 22 20.7 degrees at Heathrow. The end of the heat wave was particularly humid, and then this was followed by big thunderstorms. So let's get to that. There's the upper air temperatures on the 17th, looking nice and hot. The 18th, also looking very hot indeed. There's the 19th of July, that high pressure keeping the heat wave going. As I say, temperatures are at or above 30 degrees across many parts of the country here, going up to the 20th. That high pressure is sticking over top of the country, continuing to produce hot and dry weather. The 21st just starts to hint at a little bit of a change. The high pressure is still dominating, but it's edging ever so slightly eastwards, which begins to allow much more humid air to start to infiltrate from the south. Notice the heat low across the Bay of Biscay. It's moved out of Spain, where it doesn't do very much over Spain. There's always a heat low over Spain in the summer, but the air is too dry in the summer for that heat low to generate any rain. But as the heat low pushes out of Spain into the Bay of Biscay, just here, it picks up humidity, and with the humidity, the heat low is then able to start generating thunderstorms. So gradually pressure is beginning to leak away a little bit to the south and to the west. But still at this point, 21st of July, it is very hot and very dry. There's the upper air temperatures. We're bringing the 15 Celsius isotherm up from the south. That's very hot air heading up from south indeed. But 22nd is even hotter. 15 Celsius isotherm is pushing north across much of the country. But now the air is becoming increasingly humid and increasingly unstable as well, as the high pressure is heading up towards Scandinavia. We have all this low pressure down to the south and to the west beginning to start to generate thunderstorms. And so as we go through to the 23rd of July 2013, we find these thunderstorms becoming increasingly widespread, with these areas of low pressure starting to take the place of the high pressure. Trevor Harley writes, the end of the heat wave was particularly humid, followed by thunderstorms and widespread downpours, with some locations seeing more than 50 millimetres of rain in 24 hours around this point of the 22nd and 23rd of July. Overall rainfall averages this month are 65.0 millimetres over England and Wales, which is around average, but bear in mind there are many regional variations, and that figure is almost entirely down to the final sort of 9 to 10 days of the month. So I can actually show you the radar picture from this period, from the 22nd, the night of 22nd to 23rd of July. This has been sent through from a good friend of mine, Dean Whitaker. You can find Dean Whitaker on Twitter with the Twitter handle at Hinkley Weather. So this was 1:30 in the morning from the UK Met Office rainfall radar on the 23rd of July. And you can see thunderstorms were breaking out here across parts of eastern and southeastern England too. You can see from the very vibrant colour. This looks very different to how the radar pictures look now. Personally, I prefer this view, but there you go, I'm a bit of a stick in the bud. But as you can see from the vibrant colours, intense thunderstorms were breaking out at 1:30 in the morning on the 23rd. Let's carry on down to 2:30 in the morning. You see that the thunderstorms are getting more violent and more widespread here across the eastern parts of the country. Also some down through Wales and into southwestern parts of England as well. We go through another hour to 3:30 in the morning, and now very intense thunderstorms developing across parts of southeast England, around London, going up towards the Midlands too. Real downpour conditions. There's the scale. So when you get white appearing within these colours, they are downpour conditions, torrential rain, and no doubt very severe lightning and thunder as well. Look at that at 4:30 in the morning on the 23rd of July, how severe and widespread those thunderstorms were across many parts, particularly of Wales and through the Midlands and into East Anglia and southeastern England as well. That is 5:30 in the morning, a huge massive storms then across many central and eastern parts of the British Isles, and then we carry on down to 6:30 in the morning, again looking really severe with those thunderstorms on the 23rd of July, starting to bring an end to the prolonged heat and dry weather. That's 7:30 in the morning. Thunderstorms are beginning to trundle northwards then into northern England. Things are beginning to calm down a little bit down in the south. I think this is the lightning maps chart. So this shows you how widespread the lightning strikes were there. I'm not sure what time that would be. So it's around 5 to 7 in the morning. See how widespread the lightning strikes were. Big thank you to Dean for sending those through to me. Absolutely fascinating to see those old rainfall radar images from the UK Met Office. There's the upper air temperatures for midnight on the 23rd of July as all those thunderstorms were kicking off. The reason they were kicking off is that was in this very extreme warm upper air and unstable humid air as well. The 24th to the 25th gradually starts to trundle this area of low pressure in from the west. It's still very humid at this point, and there's further showers and longer spells of rain as well. There's what the upper air temperatures are doing as we're coming to the closing days of July 2013. So they're still very warm. They've not turned particularly cool at this point. They're cooler than they were, but still generally very warm, very humid, very unstable air. We get another area of low pressure heading northwards on the 27th. Interestingly, I've had a look at my records. This day, the 27th of July 2013, was actually wetter here where I am in Northamptonshire than was the 22nd to 23rd of July. That day, I recorded around 12 millimetres, but this day, 27th of July, in the afternoon and the evening, it's a Saturday, I recorded over 50 millimetres from around 4 to 5 hours of continuous thunderstorms. Just one huge storm developed and stuck for around 4 or 5 hours during the Saturday afternoon, evening of the 27th of July 2013. But this does truly mark the end of the hot spell then, because as that system pushes through, bringing all of that thunder and, again, over 50 millimetres of rain, for me, it finally starts to introduce a proper cooler and fresher air mass from off the Atlantic. But has summer done with us yet? That's how we end July 2013, with high pressure to our south and low pressure out to the west. And the answer of whether summer has done with us yet is that no, it hasn't, because we have one more very hot day to come on the 1st of August 2013. So, and it's very interesting because despite all the heat that occurs in July, actually the hottest day of the summer is the first day of August. So just the weather gods having a laugh at us once again. Trevor Hardy says the warmest day saw temperatures of 34.1 degrees on the 1st at London in Heathrow, which was not only the hottest day of this summer, it was also the hottest day in the UK since 2006. We have had hotter days since that, of course, in the really quite mediocre summers of the last few years. So just to show you, the hottest day does not necessarily mean a great deal for the summer overall. But this was the hottest day up to this point anyway, since 2006. This is a very warm month. This August has a CET of 16.9. It's the warmest August since 2004, but it is a cooler month compared to July. That's how the upper air temperatures look on the 1st of August. So again, we bring quite a bit of heat up from the south. It's very unstable this time, so it's not able to lock in for several days or weeks like we had in July. So this is midnight on the 2nd of August. Already low pressure is generating out to the west and starting to usher that heat away. But they are very high upper air temperatures indeed. The 20 Celsius isotherm is getting very close to the southeast. So if that low pressure hadn't developed as quickly, if it had gone on just another day or so, I think we would have probably been lifting temperatures up to 35, maybe 36 degrees if we've been able to sustain those upper air temperatures for another day or two. Remember, when you're in a hot summer, you'll get feedback mechanisms. So as the ground, particularly over Spain and France, sort of dries out, you almost get like a convective oven type effect, or a fan-assisted oven type effect, with the ground just becoming hotter and drier and hotter and drier, and as the winds waft over that increasingly hot and dry ground, so the upper air begins to get hotter as well. So if we've been able to go on another day or two with this hot weather, I think we would probably have got temperatures into the upper 30s after the heat we'd had during July, but wasn't able to do so. Very quickly, low pressure pushes that heat away to the east, and we sort of seesaw really through August 2013 between low pressure and high pressure. So at times we're trying to bring the heat back, we're trying to build the Azores high back in from the Atlantic, but never truly able to get in. Really, a few more facts and figures. So the lowest temperature is 0.2 degrees at Kimbrace on the 5th, only 5 days after that heat, of course. Again, truly remarkable, the changes that you can get in the UK, particularly in the summer, of course. It was drier than average, but also with some very wet days. So overall, we have an average of 63 millimetres, which is 83% of average across England and Wales. However, 101 millimetres of rain falls in something called Heybridge, Essex, on the 24th. I assume that must have happened in a thunderstorm. It's the sunniest August since 2007. So just carrying on running through. So again, it's kind of seesawing. We have high pressure to our south. The Azores high is trying to keep that pattern from July going, but not quite able to. These areas of low pressure always heading in from off the Atlantic, always fending off any build of pressure. This is the 21st, when again we've got this ridge trying to build to our south and to our southwest as well. And then as we head up towards the 24th, that's that thundery low that produces that heavy rain, 101 millimetres on this day, 24th of August 2013 in Heybridge, Essex, almost certainly from a thunderstorm associated with this thundery trough coming in from off the Atlantic. The end of the month sees the Azores high again trying to throw up a ridge. That's how we finish the summer and also finish August 2013 with the Azores high just out to our southwest, and again not quite able to return us to that sustained hot and dry weather that we had in July. I'll just run you very quickly into the autumn. So we do get a brief spell of very warm weather in early September. We see temperatures going up to 30.2 degrees in Writtle, which is near Chelmsford in Essex, on the 5th from this area of high pressure to our east. There's the upper air temperatures lifting up again, so one final throw of the dice for proper summer heat on the 5th of September 2013, but by the 6th we start to drop the temperature very dramatically. So the 6th was much colder and wet in places too, with Durham seeing 45.6 millimetres of rain in 12 hours. Conditions were also bad in North Yorkshire, where a place called Saltburn was hit by flash flooding. There's a very big drop in temperature, so the minimum temperature was minus 2.4 degrees at Kimbrace, Sutherland, early on the 6th. Bearing in mind the day before, the 5th, had temperatures up to 30.2 in Essex. So again, just to show how quickly and dramatically the weather can change. There's the upper air temperatures for the 6th of September. The heat is down in the southeast, but look much, much cooler with those upper air temperatures up to the north. And by the 7th, those cooler upper air temperatures are pushing through the whole of the country, and it's unsettled with showers or longer spells of rain as well. This month has a CET by way of 13.7, which is around average really, but up to this point, we had quite a few fairly warmish Septembers, so it was one of the cooler Septembers that we'd had up to this point. Of course, the September before, in 2012, was very cool and also very unsettled as well. You'll notice it's quite an unsettled month, particularly through the middle part of the month, with low pressure never too far away. But the end of the month sees high pressure again trying to build from the south, and actually does bring a push of really warm upper air temperatures, although it's very cloudy, so quite warm and humid down on the surface, but nothing like as hot as you might think by those upper air temperatures, just into the upper teens or low 20s Celsius. That's how we end September 2013, with high pressure trying to build itself over Scandinavia and low pressure out to the west. I'll just run you through October very quickly. Really changeable month in October 2013. Has a CET of 12.5, so it's a very mild month, quite a warm month, but it is also pretty unsettled as well. After a reasonably dryish and warm start, it just turns more and more autumnal, and as we go towards the end of the month, of course, we get a named storm. We get storm St. Jude occurring on the 27th, 28th of October 2013. There's the low pressure out to the west that spawned Jude. There's the little disturbance on the jet stream that became Jude. Here we are on the midnight on the 28th of October with this low pressure heading in, bringing gale force winds to the south and a lot of heavy rain as well. There was, as Trevor said, there was a notable destructive storm across the south on the 27th to 28th of October, nicknamed, so it wasn't officially named, the UK Met Office at this point wasn't officially naming storms. In fact, I think this might have been the storm that kind of inspired the UK Met to start running with official names, but at this point it was just nicknamed by the media the St. Jude's storm. And that's how we end October 2013, on a rather unsettled looking note. And of course that Storm St. Jude, was the start of what was to be an incredibly violently stormy autumn, and particularly winter. Not necessarily the autumn, but particularly the winter of 2013-2014 was extraordinarily wet. It's a horrible winter. You couldn't step outside the back door or front door without getting soaked. Continuously raining, and also many storms as well. And it all began at the end of October 2013, but that, as they say, is another story, and it's for another video. So that's where I'm going to end things. Hope you found our look at the spring and summer of 2013 interesting. Hope it brought back a few memories. I'll just leave you with a few pictures. I haven't got many this time because we had a look at those radar images, but I'm not sure where that is, but it looks like it's some pretty impressive snow drifting, absolutely burying those cars. Again, there we've got cars looking really quite buried in snow and frost. That's Brighton Beach in March 2013. Quite extraordinarily snow covered there, and that's somewhere in the Peak District with huge snow drifts. I'm not sure how many feet those drifts are, maybe going up to 20 foot perhaps, I'm not sure, but certainly quite extraordinary snow drifts in the Peak District in March 2013. And the rest, as I say, is weather history. Alright, we've gone on for an hour, so I hope you found this video looking at the spring and summer of 2013 interesting and informative. Thanks so much for tuning in on your Easter Monday. Whatever you're doing, continue to have a lovely day, and things will be back to normal at website tomorrow with the usual regular weather videos, so come back tomorrow for all of the latest, and at 1 hour and 1 minute. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.